And I don't want to take that away from anyone by discussing this. My views are very different than a lot of people, similar to some. So anyway, I started out, I was baptized a Lutheran at the church downtown that's now condos, I think. Yeah, I think they just turned it. It was Bethlehem. And then growing up, went to a lot of different churches. At least in my mind, it was a lot. Few Lutheran, one Christian Science, which I really thought was pretty cool. But I didn't technically go to church because when you're a kid, you only go to Sunday school there. And then I, through an overnight at my friend's house, found this new church, and our whole family wound up joining it. Obviously, it's because of me. And I chose it because I thought it had a cool pipe organ. And they were pretty open-minded. They would let anybody do the communion thing. And I don't really believe in excluding people and trying to make them feel different. And this is something I came to after I got a drunk driving, because I now go to AA, and that's a huge part of my transformation. And let me also say that I do not speak for AA. There's a lot of people in AA that believe stuff that I don't believe, and they like to say that there's a wrench there that'll fit any nut that walks through the door. So I identify with that. Not everybody has to be the same to get it. But in AA, they tell you need to find a power greater than yourself that could restore you to sanity. And it's kind of funny because I compare AA to church a lot, just because, you know, walking in the door, there's some people walking into AA that the judge told them they have to come, and they don't think they're insane. So anyway, so yeah, I did that. I investigated a lot of different religions because they don't tell you which one you're supposed to pick. And one of the words that stuck out of me in the steps was meditation, because I had never tried that. Prayer, somewhere between graduating high school, going to college, taking some philosophy classes, not being able to prove there's a God, and then moving on through life and getting drunk a lot, I somehow decided that I didn't like Christians. I never personally had too many bad experiences. Growing up, I do know that some of our family members never thought we went to the right church, and they were always trying to recruit us to the right one. I actually, in high school, there was a kid that I had never spoken to before. I was involved in my high school youth group, Young Life, if any of you know what that is. Loved both of those, had great experiences. And then this kid came up and sat by me at lunch when I think I was a senior, and he's like, "Ron, do you like rock music?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to go see a rock concert at my church on Sunday or Saturday or whatever day it was?" And I'm like, "Sure." And so me and my girlfriend went, and girlfriend's dad's like, "Oh, you're going to the Money Church." And that's how he saw it. And so they did a little concert, and they said, "Okay, we want to pray, and if you have not accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, I want you to look up at me right now." And I didn't look up, because at that time I was calling myself a Christian. And then the guy who invited me searched me out and sat right next to me. And I had already been to a seminar on religious cults, and I'm a little skeptical anyway. So he looks over at me and he goes, "Did you look up?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, because they said anybody that looked up, come on up, we'll fix you up with a prayer partner. That's a thing cults a lot of times do too. Not that it's always a cult thing, FYI. Well, he's the one that should know all this. I'm trying not to ruin anything for anybody. So anyway, I said, "No, I'm fine." And he's like, "Okay." Never spoke to the kid again. So that kind of gives me bad experience. The stuff I see in, anyway, that's another question. But that's how I got here. Thanks.
Awesome. All right. Christy.
Hi, I'm Christy Heilman, for those who don't know me. Thank you. I grew up in upstate New York, and my family went to church there. I don't remember much. We were only there till I was 5 or 6. My dad got transferred to Michigan, so when we moved, we never really found a church that we went to, and so I grew up just not going to church, not experiencing that. Most of my upbringing, I heard a lot from my mom. She was raised with the beliefs that kind of just a negative vibe with the Bible, that, God is a punishing God, and that you're a sinner, you're going to hell, you're unclean, just all these negative things. And so she shared those thoughts with me. She didn't teach me that or anything like that. But so as she's sharing this with me, I'm sitting there thinking, why would anybody want to follow this? It doesn't sound good. They make you feel bad about yourself. I don't understand that. So never really pursued it. I went to churches with some of my friends and that sort of thing. And I know I had a few instances that stuck out when I was a kid. I went to a Bible camp just across the street. A neighbor had one. They invited me. So each day we'd show up and we'd do a little Bible lesson and everything. And the only thing I remember from this Bible lesson is that they had a little sheet with slots for quarters, and they were doing some sort of fundraiser, and they said, if you feel like you want to give, bring some quarters, so I brought some quarters. Well, then the next day, this little boy gave his entire allowance, and the youth leader, whoever it was leading this, praised him up and down and drew him up in the front, and oh, isn't he just wonderful? He gave everything he had, and that is just so kind. And the message I got from that was, so I have to give money? Like, he's better than me because he gave more money? Like, that's what this is about? That doesn't make sense either, So it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, feeling like I wasn't good enough, I wasn't giving enough, I wasn't doing it right, I wasn't, and nobody really explained that to me, so that's the thought I carried with me. I grew up in the Saginaw area, and I came over to West Michigan for college, and coming over is a culture shock. I don't know if you guys all know that. There's a church on every corner. People say, hi, what's your name? What church do you go to? And I'm like, I don't go to church. And after saying that a few times, I realized, like, that's not the right answer. They don't want to hear that. They don't accept that. So I started making excuses. Well, college, I ran track, and we traveled on the weekends. We get home really late. Sunday mornings just don't work for me. And after college, I volunteered at the Humane Society, and I specifically picked Sundays. Sundays, it's closed to the public, so then I spend time with the dogs on Sunday, so I couldn't go to church on Sunday. But you just immediately felt judged, immediately felt like you were doing something wrong because you didn't go. So again, I just got a bad taste in my mouth about it. Why is everybody so urgent? Why do I have to? What does that mean? So after all the excuses, after college, I ended up going to so many weddings. I finally started to feel like I was fitting in. I memorized the Lord's Prayer. I was like, yes, I can finally say it along with everybody else. I can kind of fit in. Nobody's going to know that I don't go to church, because it really was intimidating. I mean, you're there, they're saying, oh, open to Psalm 23 in your Bible, and you're like, is. I don't know where to look. I don't even know where to start. By the time I find it, they're already done with that passage. They sing hymns. I can't read music. Like, it's high pitch. I don't even know what notes to sing. Like, everything was just, it was very foreign. It felt like a foreign world. I didn't know when to stand up. I didn't know when to sit down. When they said, peace be with you, I'm like, okay, now I know I have to say, and also with you. Okay. I'm finally getting this. But it was all because I was trying to memorize what I was supposed to do. Nobody really taught me the meaning. Nobody taught me why. What I did have, spirituality-wise, was running. A lot of people meditate or do other things. I ran. I would go on long runs on Sunday. I would go out on trails into the woods, and that's when I would feel the closest to God. When I married Doug and got together with him, we started doing that together. He had a bad experience with church and no longer went, and so the two of us would go out, and we'd say, that's our church. That's our church. We spend time together. We feel close to God. We feel the beauty of nature and everything like that. And that was good enough for us at that point. When we talked about having kids, we decided that we did want to raise them in church, just so that they could be aware of what's out there, and then they can make their own choices as they got older. So we started to look, and we tested out several different churches, big ones, small ones, like all varieties. We came to RiverTree, and that's kind of how we ended up here. It felt like a really good fit. I always believed in God. I always prayed. I didn't do it the way I do now or anything like that, but I always was talking and always believing there was some higher power that created us, that created nature, that did all this wonderful stuff. But I was very intimidated by what I didn't know, and I felt very ignorant, and I knew I wanted to explore it for myself and not just go off of the opinions that I'd heard growing up, and I wanted to find out for myself what it was all about. So that's how I ended up here.
Thank you, Christy. All right, and last, Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Locke. Hey, I'm Chris Locke. Been coming here a few months. I'm usually at the back of one of the tables. Growing up, I probably grew up in one of the more deep in Christianity ways you could. Went to a Baptist church long as I can remember, and went to a Lutheran school up until high school. So it wasn't so much as Christianity was the choice I had made as it was the equivalent of the sky is blue, you know. You get up in the morning, you go to bed, God exists, praise Jesus. That was my life. And got involved with youth groups and church and all these things, and it was good because I hadn't had the time to say, well, why do we do this? It was just, yay, we do this. Got into high school, went to a school in GRPS, which was a culture shock to say the least. And people started to come into prominence at the church in like youth leadership positions that started saying things that I couldn't agree with. Stuff like babies don't go to heaven and people with mental disabilities don't go to heaven because they haven't had the time to take accountability for what they've done. And I had to start examining what I believed, and I'm like, I can't accept that this is the God that I was following, but if it is, I can't be a part of this. So for a long time, I had to step away, and I would get those looks in the occasions where I would have to be involved with the church for one reason or another because my parents were still actively a part of it. And it was always the, oh, look, here's the rebel. Let's just patronize him a little bit. And spent some time trying to find another church. Maybe that was the exception rather than the rule. And still the same song in a different key. So I took some time away from Christianity. I'd never doubted that there was a God. That was just a part of me. But if that was the God that they wanted me to believe, I had to see if there was another answer. So I explored different beliefs for a while. I explored Wicca, I explored paganism, I explored all these things. And during that time, I had started to become a bit cynical and a bit cold-hearted. And then I had the good fortune of meeting a couple crazy people who became pretty close friends to me. And
Who are here this morning, by the way.
who are here this morning.
And who call our church home. What a surprise. It doesn't narrow down the list any.
And the female of the group just one day was like, why don't you come to church with us? And, you know, I was not on the best terms with church at the moment, but you know what, I want to spend time with them, let's go to church. And at that time, my heart wasn't in the right place, but I immediately knew in hearing PC's first sermon that, okay, this is different. This is something's different here. One reason or another, it wasn't the right time. I drifted away for a bit, and sometime in the spring, I started coming back. And the Love Your Neighbor Network sheets, one day I put on there, I was having a crisis of faith, and I was at a crossroads. And PC was kind enough to message me and say, let's get together, let's talk about this. And I've had the fortune of getting to know PC pretty well, and we've had some really good talks, and that's brought me to where I am.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right, so you guys need to be a little succinct in answering the next two, okay? No, you just need to be mindful of time. That's okay. All right. So give me the bullet points to, and you know what the questions are. So we've got two questions that are related. They're actually the inverse of each other. Here's the first one. You guys tell us what some very common misperceptions are about people like you who aren't Christians, weren't Christians, had been run off by the church, whatever. What do people in church or Christians often just totally get wrong about people like you? Ron, you want to start?
Sure. I was thinking about this a lot and trying. It's so hard to go up to somebody and say, here's what you do wrong. Because that's what I fear the most in church and all that stuff. But I can tell you the reason why I don't say I'm a Christian is, one, because I think those labels divide. I think that if you're saved you're not saved, you're one of the chosen one, and all of you are infidels, pretty soon, everybody's looking at each other like an infidel. And I think church is Chris did I hesitate to call them sermons because they don't sound like sermons to me. It sounds like something that encourages me to be a better person when I leave. But that's why I don't want to have to deny science, which I know lots of you don't. But these are all. One thing I've learned is that it's not always the right opinion that gets all the press. It's usually the loudest one, and the loudest people aren't the people. The loudest people are usually the ones I learn that I shouldn't be like, and so, I would not call myself anti-science. I don't think science and religion are opposites. I think we are all trying to understand why we're here, where we're going, how we got here, and I don't think they should be fighting. So that's one of the things. But I know a lot of people in here today aren't anti-science or whatever, or aren't. You don't have to believe in a certain miracle that happened and then you get to go to heaven. If you don't believe in that miracle, then sorry. So those are reasons why I don't call myself one. And I think in order for me to actually live it the right way, I think if someone comes up to me and says, "What are you?" I just say, "I'm whatever you are." To me, that's the best answer I could give.
So if you're hearing Ron, think about how he says he has had Christian people misperceive him. He has heard that, if you're a good Bible-believing Christian person, then you can't believe in science. And he's felt like he was a person who asks hard questions sometimes, doubts some things, is skeptical about some things, and he's been led to the conclusion that he can't be that and be a Christian. That's important for you to know about people like Ron. Christy.
I think one of the misperceptions that people have is that we're not as good as the rest of you. If you're a Christian, you're better than us. I have a couple examples just from my personal life that kind of support this. Ethan and Owen are my two stepsons, and they both go to a Christian school. And I can't remember the specific comment they made, but what they were basically saying is that, well, the kids in our school versus a public school, whoa, those public school kids. And I had to stop them and say, wait a minute, just because you go to a Christian school and you say you're a Christian, it does not mean you do things better. It does not mean you behave better. It does not mean you act out what you are saying you're acting out. There are a lot of hypocrites, both in Christian and non-Christian communities. So you just need to keep that in check and realize that each person is an individual, and a label doesn't make you one way or another. And I'm going to say this, and I hope they don't feel guilty about this. My in-laws are here. I know that they were concerned about Doug's faith. He sort of strayed from the church, and then when we started dating, naturally they're going to be concerned because I didn't go to church. So I'm sure they were worried, where is this going to take him? Where are they going to end up? And I know they probably spent sleepless nights praying about it. What I hope that they learned and that other people can learn is that I still had a big heart. I still believed in God. I still prayed. I wanted to help people. That's just always been who I am. And whether or not I went to church, that didn't define me. I was still doing all the things that RiverTree talks about. I was loving God. I wanted to love my neighbor. Whether I was a Christian or not, I was still walking in those footsteps. So, like I said, hopefully I've showed you that. And I hope other people can open up their eyes and their hearts to that a label doesn't make you one way or another.
It's very important to hear. Did you hear what Christy said? She wasn't active in church. She was not a Christian yet, and yet God was very active in her life, moving and stirring and still shaping her. Think of how often Christian people are led to believe that folks who aren't in the church or who are quote-unquote non-Christians are simply devoid from God's activity and don't care about God or don't have this deep-seated sense of morality or right and wrong that Christy said she had. This should be light bulbs as you interact with people who are not part of the church. It should change the way you listen to them and the way you view them. Chris?
Yeah, I think two of the big ones for me growing up have been, I feel like it is with some Christians, and it's easy to fall into, is if you're in a church and you're in it very much and you step away, automatically there's something in their head of, well, what's wrong with them? Why have they turned to Satan? Why are they now worshiping and killing goats and all this stuff? And believe me, I got those kind of looks. And I think it's really easy to equate salvation with being inside of a building. And the thing for me has always been, if that's the case, why is it when you go to one of those places to do your taxes, why haven't you become an accountant? And then another big one is, I think that, like you both said so well, is it's easy for someone to look at someone who's not in the church and say, well, clearly they're not moral, or clearly they don't have good ethics, or clearly they don't have spirituality in them because they would be here on Sundays singing the old hymns with us. And I think it's an easy thing to fall into, but I think it's based on lack of knowledge on the person. I feel in parts. So, yeah.
Very good. We're going to skip to the last question. I want you guys to help us through your own personal perspective and experience. We want to be a church that cares for and reaches out to people like you are or you were. That, in fact, I'd tell you, churches don't get a choice about that. We all should be doing it. It's just a question of whether or not we are. Each person here, to one degree or another, has said they are willing to be that kind of person. We want to reach out to people like you are or were. So, you need to give us the benefit of your insight. How can a church or a Christian person, how can they try to reach out and love you and even let you know what Jesus has meant to them and what he could do for you potentially in a way that is healthy and positive, that will be received well by folks like you? Ron, you want to start?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I said, I equate a lot of this to AA because in AA, a lot of people assume that whoever's walking in the door wants to quit drinking. I wasn't one of those people, and not everybody does that. So I don't think everybody walking through the door will want to be saved. Just a guess. But to me, the best way, and we do have this thing in AA, the big book is the book that was written, Alcoholics Anonymous, whatever. And there's a phrase that people say is, sometimes you're the only big book people will see. And so you are going to be sometimes the only person from RiverTree that anybody sees. Are they going to want to come based on you or not? And I know that's believe me, no one is perfect. You know, everything that I've complained about with anything or any negative that I've said about Christianity, I've done myself. So I can't blame anybody for or say that I've never done. You know, I do all this stuff. And but to me, the things that I found most welcoming were, let's see, Joan, Nadine, their smiles. If you could put more of those out there, I felt so welcome the first time I came, you know. And when I first came in, I was and this is something I've tried to learn, is just to try and be as open-minded as possible, and try and look at whatever belief system the person in front of you has is absolutely necessary to their survival, just like yours is. And the quote I read from a good Christian man's book said, which fits in our love your neighbor thing, is you love whoever is in front of you at the time. And I try and do that. Like when somebody is yelling at me, I usually get angry back. But if I can come and do what I learn here, I try and think, how can I be most helpful to this person? What can I do, to love them? Even, I have the benefit of getting to know some pretty seedy people because of where I used to hang out. I actually went to a Tiger game with a guy who admitted that he murdered somebody to me. Never, ever in my life growing up in Granville would I have ever thought that. I would do that because they were evil and they should never exist. And this person was a great person. He did some awful things for drugs and whatever, but what's the best thing for him right now, and what's the best thing for his kids? That's how I have to look at things. So this is what I do to, because I don't like being proselytized or, told I'm wrong and I have to come here to get right. I don't know anybody that does. But if I live that way, eventually somebody will be like, how'd you learn that? And that's how I find people. I mean, in AA you get like sponsors, and 2 of mine were Catholic, and they loved being Catholic, and they went all the time, and I have great admiration for them. There are other people that I would sit with that said they were recovering Catholics when they were in AA, So it might work for one, might not work for another. Just because it works for you doesn't mean I have to say, or just because it works for me doesn't mean that it's the only way for anybody ever to go.
Great, one of the probably half a dozen most important Christian writers and practitioners in church history, and a very famous way of saying what Ron has said, which is preach the gospel, use words if necessary. Preach the gospel, use words if necessary. Christy, why don't you tell us, give us the benefit of your insight about how we can better reach out to folks like you in a way that would be received well and that would be very positive.
I know some of the things that stuck out when I came to RiverTree were the fact that I didn't feel like I was in a secret club where I needed to learn the handshakes and everybody else knew them, but I didn't. Like I said, just having a system where we have the words up on the screen, you tell us when to sit up, stand, or sit. We don't have to rummage through our Bibles. The scripture's up on the screen for us to look. That's very comfortable for me to begin learning to just feel like I can concentrate on what is being said versus what am I doing right or wrong. So that was a big one. The focus being on a loving God instead of a punishing God. It's okay to be human. I mean, I don't know how many times we've sat up here and PC has said, all right, this is something we got to work on. And I'll tell you how I got to work on it because I'm not perfect either. So just admitting that we're human, admitting that none of us are better. We are all dealing with something. It makes it easier. It makes you feel like you're united instead of divided. And I think that's really important for people who are coming into this. Another one that really touched my heart is when we first came here, we did ask Ethan and Owen what they thought about the church. We had them come and said, all right, let's talk about this because it's important what you guys think too. And for Ethan, I forget how old he was at the time. He might have been 9 or 10. But to say, I like the church because when I walked in blue jeans, I didn't feel like anybody was judging what I was wearing. And I'm like, for a little kid to realize that there are specific things you should be doing, and here he doesn't feel that. He feels accepted. He feels welcome. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. The other thing for me personally is that I'm a hands-on person. I like to do. Like, you can tell me, okay, have faith, okay, pray, okay, this, okay, that. I like tangible things. I want to know what I can do to grow, to become better, to just learn more, and like I said, to expand on my thoughts and my beliefs and figure everything out. I want a way to do that, and PC is really good at doing that. I mean, we have our groves, so we have this community where we're all together, we're all loving on each other, we're all there for each other, we're learning together. It's not anything you have to do by yourself. That takes away some of the pressure. We have reaching out to Vanguard. We have reaching out to Safe Haven. I mean, we are touching the community. So we are loving our neighbors in a very tangible way. There are things you can just jump right in and you can start doing, whether or not you've said, I've accepted God and Jesus in my life. You can still do those things and start to learn what it's all about before committing to that. So basically, I see our church and the people within the church living what we preach instead of just preaching.
That's great. Thank you. Chris.
I completely agree with Christy on that. And a big thing that you had once said to us in the questions was, how has RiverTree helped in that kind of thing, and what could you guys do? And I said, just you guys are right on. And it's just to the whole fact of love your neighbor. And I feel like maybe the biggest thing would just be just have an open heart with people. Just love them. Whether or not they've strayed away, whether or not they've questioned, it just love them. Just see them for the person, not the ex, I guess would be the easiest way to say it.
Thank you. That's good. That's good. Would you thank Ron and Christy and Chris? You guys can go ahead and... We're going to end today by me asking you guys to pray for a moment. And I want to tell you what I'd like you to pray about. First, you may have noticed on the green Grove sheets that one of the new small groups this fall, this school year, is geared especially for people like we're up here. It's going to meet in bars and coffee houses all over Grand Rapids. And in fact, I'd like the two people who are going to lead this to stand up so that we can pray for you explicitly. This is Rachel Clem and Brian Kamstra, and they are going to head this up. We probably need at least one more RiverTree volunteer. If you think you would love to be involved in a group like that, let me know, or just let Rachel and Brian know, and they'll hook you up. But it's going to be especially for people just like you heard up here. And I want you to take a minute, and I want you to pray for Brian and Rachel and for this group and the people it will reach. But don't stop there. I'd like you to pick a couple of people in your life right now who are Christy or Chris or Ron. People you know who are far away from church. Maybe you had some misperceptions about that now you realize. I'd like you to pray for them by name. So would you do that? Take a moment in the quiet. Pray for Brian and Rachel and their new group, and pray for some of the quote-unquote unchurched people that you know. And then I'll pray for us all.